Minister for Crime and Policing, Kay Malthouse, is with us now. Good morning to you. Thanks for joining us on the programme.
Morning, Kay, pleasure. And thanks for covering my sobriety story yesterday. These ankle bracelets are going to make a huge difference to alcohol-related crime, we think.
Glad to hear it. Come in and talk to about it in more detail whenever you'd like to. But for this morning, let's talk about the tiering system. It does look as though it's proving quite divisive.
Well, obviously, we're in a very tricky situation, right, where this virus is moving at different speeds in different parts of the country, and so we're having to have a different approach. That's naturally creating tension. But what we hope is that the vast majority of people recognise that we have an individual duty to our collective health. They inform themselves about what the regulations are in their area and they comply. And happily, we're seeing that. Now, there will always be, as I say, tensions, particularly between political leaders who are each trying to do the right thing as they see it for their area and for the country. But it looks like in the vast majority of the areas where we are seeing, tougher lockdowns, if you like, we're getting cooperation from both sides and reaching a good settlement.
Most deprived areas are suffering most, though, aren't they? That's why they need more money.
Well, it's tough everywhere, right? I mean, everybody's having quite a hard time at the moment, and we recognise the burden that's placing on all sorts of areas, and that's why the government is doing its best to try and support as many businesses and individuals as we possibly can, reach accommodation with local leaders so that there's a sort of cooperative approach to this thing, certainly below the sort of political level. The public sector, from local authorities to police to health to other partners, are now in good shape. All those local resilience fora are working well together. The strategic coordination groups across the country also coordinating well. So I think from a structural point of view, we're in good shape. But look, it's a pandemic. It was never going to be easy.
Talk to us, if you would, please. I heard the Prime Minister's questions yesterday. I'm not sure I was completely clear after he'd made the point. What does a region have to do to come out of Tier 3? Does the R number need to be below 1?
So the R number needs to drop, but
Does it need to be below 1?
Well, it needs to be low enough that we're not going to see a significant spread. But there are a number of other things.
That's below 1, though, isn't it?
Well, yeah, in theory, it's below 1. But it also relates to the infection rate in the community as a whole, but also other indicators, right? What is the capacity in the local hospital? Are we able to cope with any kind of rise in that particular area? There will be a conversation every 28 days with local leaders and obviously with the health boffins who are looking at the numbers to look at whether we can get areas out of Tier 3. I mean, look, nobody wants to impose these things. It's a pain for everybody, and it's really tough, and it's having a huge impact on young people, the economy, everything. So we want to get out of it as quickly as we possibly can, but we have to be measured about doing that and make sure we stay on top of the virus, remembering that, our primary goal here is to get through this in reasonable shape, maintaining capacity in the NHS so they can deal with COVID and with all the other health-related problems at the same time, maintaining schools, keeping businesses open, so we limit the damage that this thing is going to cause.
But does it need to be below 1, the R rate?
It depends on the overall picture in the area. To be honest with you, Kate, I'm not sitting around the table making those assessments. Ideally, if we can get the R rate down below 1, that's where we want to be nationally and locally, yes.
OK. Yesterday, Robert Jenrick was sat there. He said he didn't know what the rules were on gyms in Greater Manchester. Then yesterday, I think 2 police officers were speaking to a select committee, and they were saying that the new Tier 3 system was too confusing. You're the policing minister, is it?
Well, look, the first thing to say is there's plenty of information out there. There's plenty of places that you can go and find out what the rules in your area are. There are some basic rules that everybody needs to bear in mind. Obviously, rule of 6, hands, face, space, all that kind of stuff. But the key thing, I think, is about social interaction. Right, in all circumstances, we're saying that if from an education point of view, you can gather. From a work point of view, if you really need to, you can gather. But from a social point of view, in the lower tier, in the medium tier, you can gather rule of 6 indoors and outdoors. For tiers 2 and 3, you can't gather indoors, and for tier 3s, you can't gather outdoors in private space, although in public space you can if you maintain rule of 6. But look,
I'm already confused.
Well, basically, we need people to be sensible, right? Everybody understands social distancing. Everybody hopefully understands the rule of 6. And in local areas, there are some variations about what can be open and what can't. And I think it behoves all of us to go and inform ourselves about what conditions we're living under and make sure that we comply.
Can gyms open in Manchester?
So I don't think gyms can. I'm not entirely sure, but then I don't live in Manchester. If I were a gym user in Manchester, I would go and check on the regulations.
When were you last a gym user?
So I am a pure gym member, and until, I don't know, a few months ago, I was in the gym in the morning. Yep. Look, it's always a struggle, these things, to stay fit, particularly given my lifestyle, but I'm a gym member. I think I'm still paying my gym membership as it happens.
Some might say you need a refund.
Oh, well, I've got to work at it. As I say, it's a constant battle.
OK. Apparently, well, I'm not sure either, but I do think
kind of you to inquire after my health.
Yes, I think gyms are allowed to be open in Liverpool and also in Lancashire. I'm guessing they will be in Manchester as well.
Look, people have to go and check.
So it is confusing, isn't it?
Well, it's not confusing if you go and check. Right? And fundamentally, that's what we need people to do. Well, I can't know from every particular area. I know the basics and I understand, but these things are moving very quickly. The thing to bear in mind, Kay, is the one thing we know about this virus is that it moves very rapidly. Right? It grows exponentially and it recedes very quickly. And so we're having to be agile. And that means that everybody needs to be aware in their area of what the regulations are. And there are lots of places that they can go and inform themselves. And they may change. You know, we're going to be reviewing them every 14, 28 days. But to stay on top of the virus, we all have to be alert, and that means being alert to the regulations.
Talk to me about what Rishi Sunak's going to say today.
I don't know. I mean, we're all a bit excited about what the Chancellor's going to say today. But as we've seen throughout the pandemic, the Chancellor has come to the House of Commons and made announcements to show how he's responding to or flexing, if you like, the support that's required in the economy to make sure that we stay in as best shape as we possibly can.
How are we going to pay
but I haven't had sight of what he's going to say.
How are we going to pay for it all? I mean, it's the highest debt since 1960, and we were still paying off what we owed for the Second World War then.
Well, that is going to be the big challenge, and that is, to be honest with you, he's got one of the toughest jobs in the country at the moment, is balancing the support that we put into the economy, the billions, frankly, that we're having to spend to get people through this in reasonable shape, against what the downstream cost is going to be. Now, back in 2015, I well remember George Osborne announcing in the House of Commons the day on which we'd finally paid off the national debt from the First World War.
I remember, yeah.
And that took us 100 years.
But you can't put taxes up, can you? Because part of your manifesto said that you're not going to put up VAT, national insurance or income tax. Well,
you'll have to ask the Chancellor about what the overall cocktail of finances is going to be.
As a Conservative, you wouldn't want to break manifesto promise, would you?
We need to bear in mind the health of the economy, and all taxation has an economic effect. And I know that the Chancellor will be thinking about that as he puts his package together. Now, obviously, announcement was made yesterday that the spending review now is only going to be a year. The budget has been delayed a little bit, and that's because our manifesto didn't include the pandemic. And we have to respond to those things. A responsible government looks at the situation it's faced with and then addresses it accordingly. And I've no doubt that it'll put in place a good, balanced package that will do the best we possibly can to get the country back on its feet.
What on earth is going on with Brexit talks? We were told that we needed to get ready for a no deal. Now it looks as though talks are happening again. How are businesses supposed to prepare for something that's going to happen in just a few weeks' time if they don't know whether there's going to be a deal or not?
Well, as in all aspects of business, and, I've been in business for 20-odd years now, you prepare for the worst and hope for the best. And it does look like we've had a bit of movement over the last couple of days from our partners in the EU. Negotiations are starting again. That is a cause for hope. But at the same time, we're getting quite close to the deadline. And so, the government has said to businesses, privately and publicly, that they need to prepare for the possibility that we might go out on WTO terms and put themselves in a good position for that. Now, we've done as much as we possibly can to prepare for that. We did it last time. We've dusted that off and supercharged it this time. And so I think from a governmental point of view, we're in good shape, and we're encouraging businesses to do exactly the same. But look, fingers crossed that this new intensification of talks results in, sensible heads all round, and we get the result that we want.
Not great at negotiating, though, are you? I mean, look what happened with Greater Manchester.
Well, I think we got a result in Greater Manchester in the end, didn't we? We finally got there. Yeah, look, this is a negotiation, right?
Didn't seem to be. You imposed it on
Well, negotiations often involve a bit of temper and tension and slamming doors and walking out and all that kind of stuff. It's in the nature of a negotiation that these things become tense, particularly towards the end when you're facing a deadline. It's naturally a human situation. The point is, do we get to the end with a good resolution? And on Manchester we did, and let's hope we do on the EU as well.
Why did you vote against the motion to extend free school meals for kids?
So this is a really tough one, Kay, and it has been, a challenge for all MPs over the last few months, not least because our email inbox have been filled with stories of difficulty and hardship from our constituents. And having to make these kinds of decisions is really hard. Fundamentally, we took a decision early on. The best way to help those on low income was to pump money into the welfare system. And so £9 billion has gone into that system to assist people on lower incomes. Universal credit now up by £1,000 a year. We've changed the housing benefit rules to enhance people's ability to pay their rent. There's council tax support. There's lots of resource that's gone in to make sure that we target help to those on low income.
Why are you being told as MPs by the Conservative whips to gang up against Marcus Rashford?
I haven't been told to gang up against
OK,
Rashford.
so the whips have issued a statement and with suggested interventions, a memo to MPs, one suggested intervention. When Labour were in government, they refused to extend free school meals into holidays. These sort of comments should be put onto Twitter if Marcus Rashford talks about kids not getting free school meals. This is a footballer who wants to put food in kids' bellies, taking on the government, and you're ganging up on him. I mean, that's pathetic.
Well, I don't think it's necessarily ganging up. I mean, it's standard practice during any debate for political parties to issue briefs with suggested lines.
Footballers?
Well, I don't think it's necessarily against footballers, right? But quite a lot of this debate takes place on Twitter now, so I don't think it's particularly remarkable that...
So you think it's appropriate?
Well, look, MPs have to make their own decisions. I didn't see that. MPs have to make their own decisions about what they say publicly, and parties obviously give guidance and information about what the party position is in a particular circumstance. It doesn't strike me as surprising. But look, nobody is decrying what Marcus Rashford is trying to do.
Yeah, they are.
And it's coming from a good place.
Via the whip.
And he's come from I suppose, a humble background. He's had that experience. He's now a very successful young man, and he wants the same for everybody else. And I think what frustrates people is there's an assumption that we don't, whereas, in fact, we do. I've spent 20-odd years in public policy in inner-city London and now in Hampshire. I've dedicated enormous amounts of my life to trying to better the progress of my fellow citizens. And the problem with these situations is where you get these really tough decisions, which governments naturally have to take, and that's the privilege and indeed the difficulty of being government, that somehow our motives are impugned. We think that the best way to help people on low income is to give them great schools, great jobs, universal credit, which has been decried months ago and is now being celebrated. We talked about
that. My question to you is, why are you taking on a footballer on Twitter?
Well, you'd have to ask the Whip's office to come on and explain that. And I don't think they're necessarily taking him on. I think what we're trying to do is
We're trying to take him down.
No, we're not. We're trying to put our point forward to say that we think there is a better, smarter way, notwithstanding the very good motivation that he has for his campaign.
And all he's trying to do
a better way to target the money.
Bellies,
no, I understand.
And the Whip's office is saying this is how you take him down.
Well, as I say, we think the best way to get this money to people on low income is through the welfare system, which we've, in the teeth of a gale of opposition, built a fantastic system which has performed incredibly well during this crisis and is now funneling money to the lowest paid to a much greater degree than it was before.
OK, we're out of time, but you're here to talk about barring EU criminals. Tell me quickly.
Yeah, so we have for some time been able to bar those convicted of a crime and sentenced to over 12 months from overseas, from non-EU, from entering the country. We're now extending that rule to EU nationals as well, and also saying that we will take a look at your offending history, even if you haven't been convicted for a sentence of over 12 months, to make sure that we take control of our border and that we know who's coming in and out. We do see, sadly, often organised criminals from the EU and indeed the rest of the world coming in to perpetrate their crimes in the UK, and this gives us much greater ability to bar them from coming in the first place. Yeah,
but we won't have access to the Europol database, will we?
Well, so we're working closely with EU partners to have workarounds around those particular issues. And, security has its own imperative, and we're pretty confident that whatever basis we leave the EU, that the security forces and the police across the EU will work together. And don't forget, we have Interpol as well that sits above Europol. But fingers crossed, Kay, this new movement results in a good deal for us and for the EU.
What gym work do you do?
So I do two things broadly. I spend a lot of time on the cross trainer. Because it means I can watch you first thing in the morning.
Very good.
On the box, and then occasionally have a go at the rowing machine for 5 minutes before I fall off.
Excellent. Thanks for joining us. We appreciate it.